Hey guys, tonight we are not wading through dusty archives or sailing ancient trade routes. No, tonight you are stepping right into the realm of Greek mythology, to a time of gods, heroes, and, well, sometimes slightly less reputable creatures, centaurs. But we're not focusing on the wild. Raucous centaurs often depicted causing trouble, getting into drunken brawls at weddings, or generally being a menace. We're here to meet one specific centaur, a truly unique figure known throughout myth for his wisdom, kindness, and quiet life away from the boisterous behavior of his kin. His name is Chiron. You might have heard snippets of his story, perhaps linked to a great hero or a constellation in the night sky. But tonight, we're settling in to explore the surprisingly peaceful aspects of his long existence. A life dedicated to teaching and healing, lived in relative tranquility compared to the tumultuous world of gods and heroes. You probably won't survive this journey into myth without feeling a sense of calm, and perhaps a quiet appreciation for a good teacher, even one with four legs and a tendency to hang out in caves. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in the comments below. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing on the foothills of a mountain in ancient Greece, the air smelling of pine and wild herbs. When you think of centaurs in Greek myth, the image that often comes to mind is one of wildness, of creatures part human, part horse, known for their uncivilized behavior. They were often depicted as followers of Dionysus, the god of wine, prone to drunkenness, lust, and violence, crashing parties and generally embodying the chaotic, untamed aspects of nature and human impulse. They were fearsome, dangerous, and certainly not known for their quiet wisdom or scholarly pursuits. Joke number one. Yeah, centaur usually means guy who shows up to your wedding and immediately starts a fight. Not exactly the settle down with a good book type, but Chiron was different. Fundamentally, profoundly different from the rest of the centaur population. While other centaurs might be characterized by their brutishness and wildness, Chiron was renowned for his intelligence, his gentleness, his deep knowledge, and his innate kindness. He was civilized, thoughtful, and a figure of great respect, even among the gods. And the key to his unique nature lies in his unusual origin story. Most centaurs in Greek myth were said to be born from a rather awkward incident involving Ixion, a mortal king, and a cloud shaped like the goddess Hera, conjured by Zeus. This parentage linked them to impiety and deception from the start. Chiron, however, had a very different lineage. He was the son of the great Titan Cronus, yes, the Titan who ate his own children, that Cronus and a beautiful nymph named Philyra. The story goes that Cronus, after being overthrown by his son Zeus and the other Olympians, was wandering the world. He encountered the nymph Philyra and was smitten. However, his wife, Rhea, was also looking for him. To evade detection, Cronus transformed himself into a magnificent horse to mate with Philyra. The result of this unusual union was Chiron, a creature who was part human from Philyra, though herself a mythical being and part horse from Cronus in his equine form. This dual nature, stemming from a divine, albeit strange, Titan father and a gentle nymph mother, set him apart entirely from the Ixion-born centaurs. He wasn't born of a cloud and a mortal's hubris. He was born of ancient divine power and a spirit of nature. A quirky tidbit about Chiron's birth involves his mother's reaction. According to some versions of the myth, when Philyra saw the strange creature she had given birth to, half human child and half horse body, she was so horrified and distressed that she prayed to the gods to be transformed into something else. Anything but her current form. The gods, taking pity on her, allegedly turned her into a linden tree. Imagine your reaction to your newborn baby resulting in your mother immediately requesting to be turned into a plant. There's joke number two. Well, that's one way to react to a unique baby. Beat sending a passive-aggressive text. I guess busted. This detail, while sad, further highlights the unusual circumstances of Chiron's arrival in the world. Because of this distinct parentage, Chiron was not subject to the same wild, unruly nature as the other centaurs. He inherited a connection to both ancient divine wisdom through his father and the gentle spirit of nature through his mother. This allowed him to develop his intellect and character in ways that his half-brothers, the Ixion-born centaurs, are often referred to as his half-brothers, though their shared link is tenuous, simply did not. He grew up civilized, intelligent, and possessing a unique understanding of the world. His appearance, while still half-human, half-horse, was often described in ways that reflected his noble nature, unlike the rough, coarse features sometimes attributed to other centaurs. Chiron was often depicted with a wise, serene human face, his equine body strong and graceful. He didn't look like a wild beast with a man's torso. He looked like a wise, ancient being. In his early life, perhaps living with his mother before her transformation, or taught by other wise beings, some myths say Apollo and Artemis themselves instructed him, Chiron acquired vast knowledge. He learned about healing, music, hunting, prophecy, warfare, and wisdom itself. He was, in essence, educated by the best, thanks to his divine connections. This extensive learning, combined with his innate gentle nature and immortality, a gift from his Titan parentage, set the stage for the role he would become most famous for, that of a teacher. In Greek mythology, Chiron was a unique immortal centaur, distinguished from his largely wild and brutish brethren by his divine parentage son of the Titan Cronus and the nymph Philyra. His profound wisdom, extensive knowledge especially in healing, music, and hunting, and his renowned gentleness and kindness. This is our mainstream historical fact, establishing his singular place in myth. Scholars still debate the mythological purpose and symbolism behind Chiron's unique parentage and nature, questioning what it represented within the broader Greek pantheon and monster myths. Was he created specifically to provide a good counterpoint to the wild centaurs? Did his mixed divine and nymph parentage symbolize a harmonious blend of ancient cosmic power and the spirit of the natural world? Or did his transformation from his parent signify something about the unpredictable nature of mythic births? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, digging into the deeper meaning of his existence. Chiron's gentle beginning and unique nature set him on a path very different from the wild centaurs. He was destined not for drunken revels or chaotic battles, but for a life of quiet wisdom, peaceful teaching, and providing guidance in a world that desperately needed it. Joke number 3. Being the only civilized one in the family must have made Thanksgiving awkward. Pass the ambrosia, please. Try not to trample anyone. Chiron, the gentle centaur, set apart from his wild kin by his unique, divine-touched birth, was destined not for drunken revels, but for a life of wisdom and teaching. And for most of his long, immortal existence, that life was centered in a specific, peaceful place, his home on Mount Pelion. This wasn't just any mountain in Greek myth. Pelion in Thessaly was often depicted as a place of great natural beauty, covered in forests, its slopes leading down towards the sea. It was a fitting retreat for a creature connected to both the divine and the natural world. Imagine Mount Pelion rising from the landscape, its slopes covered in ancient trees, oaks, pines, beeches, their leaves rustling in the breeze. Wildflowers bloom in meadows, streams cascade down rocky slopes, and the air is clean and crisp, carrying the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and fragrant herbs. In the distance, you might glimpse the shimmering blue of the Aegean Sea. This was Chiron's domain, a place of tranquility and natural abundance. Sensory details the smell of pine and damp earth, the sound of wind in the trees and water flowing, the visual of the green slopes and distant sea. And his dwelling, it's most often described as a cave. But don't picture a dark, damp, rough hole in the side of the mountain, like the lairs of wild beasts or indeed, like where other centaurs might shelter. Chiron's cave was a home, a workshop, a study, and a classroom all in one. It would have been adapted to suit his needs as a civilized being. Perhaps the entrance was large and airy, letting in plenty of natural light. Inside, the floor might have been smoothed, areas partitioned, and natural rock formations integrated into the living space. There would be space for sleeping, for studying scrolls or tablets, for storing herbs and tools, and, crucially, for teaching his pupils. Imagine the interior, the air cooler and more constant than outside, carrying the scent of dry earth, stored herbs, and maybe the faint, comforting smell of a carefully maintained fire. Sunlight or lamplight would illuminate different areas. There might be simple furnishings, perhaps carved wooden benches or platforms, shelves built into the rock or made of wood, maybe even rudimentary tables. It was a space of quiet order and learning, a stark contrast to the wildness of the mountain outside and the often chaotic lives of the heroes who would seek him out. Chiron resided in a dwelling, typically described as a comfortable and adapted cave, located on Mount Pelion in Thessalion, Greece. This mountain environment was renowned in myth for its natural beauty and served as a deliberate retreat from the chaotic human world, forming the peaceful base for his scholarly pursuits and renowned teaching activities. This is our mainstream historical fact, establishing the setting of his life. The environment of Mount Pelion was perfectly suited to Chiron's vast knowledge and peaceful pursuits. The forest provided wood for fires and tools, and hunting grounds for teaching archery and tracking. The slopes and meadows were rich in medicinal herbs, allowing him to practice and teach healing. The quiet solitude of the mountain was ideal for contemplation, study, and practicing music. Chiron was skilled with the lyre. Streams and springs provided fresh water. It was a self-sufficient world, providing everything he needed for his life of learning and teaching. Sensory details the taste of cool mountain water from a spring, the smell of various drying herbs hanging in the cave, the sound of a lyre being played softly in the quiet mountain air. A quirky tidbit about Chiron's cave involves specific descriptions sometimes found in ancient texts. While not every myth goes into detail, some accounts describe specific features within his dwelling that made it suitable for a scholar. These might include areas for storing extensive collections of scrolls or writing materials, dedicated spaces for preparing medicines, or even unique natural formations within the cave that served specific purposes. Perhaps like a natural amphitheater for teaching, or a pool fed by a spring. Imagine his cave having a built-in library carved into the rock. There's joke number one. Yes, it's a cave. But it's a very well-organized cave, with excellent shelf space for my extensive scroll collection. And no noisy neighbors, just occasionally a passing bear. The peacefulness of his Pelion home was a deliberate choice, or perhaps simply suited his nature. Away from the cities and the common haunts of other centaurs, he created a sanctuary of learning and tranquility. This retreat allowed him to develop his wisdom undisturbed and offer guidance to those who sought it out, without being constantly drawn into the conflicts and chaos of the wider world. Scholars debate the symbolic significance of Mount Pelion as Chiron's mythological residence, questioning whether its natural characteristics held deeper meaning beyond being a convenient and isolated backdrop for his story. Did the blend of wild mountain nature and Chiron's civilized dwelling within it symbolize the potential for wisdom to exist even outside human settlements? Did its height connect him metaphorically to the heavens and divine knowledge, complementing his divine parentage? Or was it simply chosen by the mythmakers as a plausible, secluded location for an ancient sage to live? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, pondering the deeper symbolic landscape of his home. Chiron's peaceful Pelion home was more than just a place to live. It was the foundation of his identity as the wise centaur, the great teacher. It provided the environment necessary for his scholarly pursuits and the quiet refuge where heroes could come to learn from him. Joke number two, you picture the quiet cave. Much better than living in a noisy centaur party pad, though probably harder to get furniture up the mountain. It was a sanctuary of wisdom in a world that was often anything but peaceful. Joke number three, You imagine him politely declining invitations to centaur parties. No, thank you. I have scrolls to read and potentially a hero to tutor. Very busy. His serene mountain dwelling was the perfect setting for the next phase of his story, teaching the heroes who would define Greek myth. You've seen Chiron's peaceful home on Mount Pelion, a sanctuary of quiet wisdom, perfectly suited to his nature. But what made him seek out or inhabit such a place, seemingly so different from the usual behavior of other creatures who shared his basic form? The key, as we touched on briefly, lies in truly understanding what set Chiron apart, fundamentally and irrevocably, from his savage kin, the other centaurs of Greek myth. When ancient Greeks spoke of centaurs, they were usually not talking about a kindly sage. The typical image was one of wildness personified. Centaurs were often depicted as inhabitants of mountains and forests, lacking social graces, given to drunkenness, lust, and violence. Their most famous mythological appearance? Perhaps Ibtisi is at the wedding feast of Pirat House, king of the Lapiths, where, drunk on wine, a substance they weren't used to, they attempted to abduct the bride and other women, sparking a chaotic and bloody battle between the Lapiths and the Centaurs. Sensory details imagine the crash of furniture, the shouting, the smell of spilled wine and sweat in a chaotic brawl, the sound of hooves and humans struggling. This was the standard centaur reputation: unruly, dangerous, embodiments of untamed nature and passion. Joke number 1. Inviting a centaur to your wedding was apparently the ancient Greek equivalent of asking if anyone brought a wrestling ring. Things were going to get messy, but Chiron was different. Fundamentally, profoundly, astonishingly different. Chiron is consistently portrayed in Greek mythology as a uniquely wise, just civilized, and benevolent centaur, standing in stark contrast to the majority of other centaurs, who were typically depicted as wild, violent, lawless, and lacking in self-control. This is our mainstream historical fact about his portrayal in myth. He was, in essence, the exception that proved the rule, the outlier in the herd. The primary mythological reason for this stark divergence, as we touched upon in Section 1, is his unique parentage. While the common centaurs were said to be born from the union of the mortal Ixion and a cloud in the likeness of Hera, a birth steeped in deceit and mortal transgression, Chiron was the son of the ancient Titan Cronus in his horse form, and the gentle nymph Philaira. This gave Chiron a lineage that connected him to the oldest divine powers in the natural world in a way the others were not. He wasn't born of cloud trickery, he was born of ancient deity and nymph, inheriting a different essence entirely. He simply wasn't one of them, not in character, even if he shared their form. This different origin manifested in entirely contrasting qualities. While other centaurs were driven by instinct and passion, Chiron embodied intelligence, wisdom, morality, justice, and remarkable self-control. He was learned in a wide array of arts and sciences, knowledge he willingly shared. His association was not with the chaotic revels of Dionysus, but with deities of order, healing, music, and the hunt, like Apollo and Artemis, who are even said by some myths to have been among his teachers in his youth. He represented the potential for intellect and virtue to exist even in a form often associated with wildness. His peaceful home on Mount Pelion also contributed to fostering this difference. Away from the herds of other centaurs, who often lived and roamed together, sometimes in conflict with humans or each other, Chiron created a secluded environment conducive to study, contemplation, and the quiet practice of his arts. He wasn't immersed in the constant chaos of their typical lifestyle. He deliberately separated himself, creating his own space for learning and wisdom to flourish. This separation wasn't just geographical, it was social. Chiron didn't join the rampaging herds. He wasn't involved in their conflicts or their wild feasts. He existed apart. His reputation that of a solitary sage and mentor, not a participant in centaur brawls. He was a centaur in form, yes, but in temperament and mind, he aligned more with the wise old men, the revered sages, or even certain benevolent deities in human guise who offered guidance to mortals and heroes. A quirky tidbit that highlights the distinction is sometimes seen in the names given to centaurs in myths. While many centaurs have names that evoke wildness, aggression, or physical prowess like Pholus, Nessus, Eurytion, Chiron's name, with its potential links to Greek words for hand or skilled with hands, possibly referencing healing or other arts, seems to hint at his different nature, focusing on skill and helpfulness rather than brute force or wildness. There's joke number 2. Yeah, my name means skilled healer, while my cousin Bone Crusher is less subtle. We have different career paths. Scholars debate the primary mythological function of portraying Chiron as fundamentally different from other centaurs. Was he created by the myth-makers primarily to serve as a philosophical counterpoint, suggesting the possibility of innate virtue and wisdom overriding even a monstrous form, offering a glimmer of hope for taming wildness? Or did his unique nature serve a more practical narrative role, necessary to provide a suitably divine-linked, immortal, and knowledgeable figure who could act as a credible teacher for the greatest heroes of Greece, fulfilling a narrative need in those myths? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, pondering the purpose behind his exceptionalism. Chiron's separation from his savage kin was the defining aspect of his character, stemming from his unique birth and nurtured by his environment and choices. He was the civilized outlier, the wise sage with the body of a horse, ready to offer guidance to the young heroes who would shape the future of myth. Joke number 3. You imagine other centaurs trying to get him to join their parties. Come on, Chiron? There's wine and potential for property damage, Chiron. Are you just reading scrolls again? His difference made him the perfect, uniquely qualified figure to be the mentor of legends. Set apart by his unique birth, residing in a peaceful mountain sanctuary on Mount Pelion, Chiron wasn't just different in nature and location from his wild kin. He was vastly different in mind and knowledge. His long, immortal life on Pelion was dedicated to acquiring, mastering, and eventually passing on an immense body of knowledge that made him the most sought-after teacher in the mythical Greek world. Chiron wasn't just knowledgeable in one or two areas. His expertise spanned a remarkable range of disciplines, making him the ultimate Renaissance man. Long before the Renaissance, he was a scholar of many arts, blending practical skills necessary for survival and heroism with intellectual, artistic, and even spiritual wisdom. One of his most famous and vital skills was his knowledge of healing and medicine. He was a master healer, deeply familiar with the properties of countless herbs found on Mount Pelion and beyond. He knew how to prepare poultices, antidotes, and remedies for wounds, illnesses, and poisons. He understood the art of surgery and setting bones. In a dangerous world where heroes constantly faced injury, this knowledge was invaluable. Imagine him carefully examining a wound, the smell of crushed herbs filling the air, his large and strong hands surprisingly gentle as he applies a bandage. Sensory details the pungent or sweet smell of medicinal herbs, the feel of a soft poultice, the cool touch of his hand. He was also an expert in hunting. While other centaurs might hunt wildly for food, Chiron taught it as a discipline, focusing on tracking, archery, and respect for nature. He taught his pupils how to move silently through the woods, how to use a bow and arrow effectively, and how to understand the habits of animals. Sensory details the feel of a smooth, taut bowstring, the scent of the forest floor, the quiet focus of the hunt. Music was another area of his mastery. Chiron was skilled at playing the lyre and other instruments. Music in ancient Greece was seen as vital for education, discipline, and charming the gods. He taught his pupils not just how to play, but likely also about harmony, rhythm, and the power of music. Sensory details the gentle strumming sound of a lyre in the quiet mountain air, the resonance of the notes, His knowledge extended to the stars. Chiron was wise in astrology and prophecy, able to read the constellations and perhaps interpret omens. This connected him to the celestial realm and provided guidance beyond the immediate physical world. Sensory details the visual of constellations on a clear mountain night sky. The feeling of contemplating vastness. For heroes, physical prowess was essential, and Chiron provided training in gymnastics and athletics, teaching his pupils how to be strong, agile, and enduring. He likely also instructed them in warfare and combat, teaching them how to handle various weapons, spear, sword, bow, and the tactics of battle. Blending physical skill with strategic thinking, sensory details the feel of tired muscles after exercise, the weight of a practice weapon in your hand, the sounds of training. Beyond these practical and artistic skills, Chiron was a fount of wisdom and morality. He taught his pupils about justice, ethics, self-control, and how to navigate the complex social and moral landscape of their world. He instilled in them virtues like courage, honor, and piety. This was perhaps his most important teaching, shaping not just their abilities, but their character. How did he acquire all this knowledge? Myths offer different possibilities. Some say he was taught directly by gods, perhaps Apollo associated with healing, music, archery, and prophecy, and Artemis associated with hunting and the wilderness, visiting him on Pelion. Others imply that his unique, immortal nature and long life simply allowed him centuries to observe, learn, study, and master these fields through his own efforts and innate intelligence. Perhaps it was a combination: divine instruction early on, followed by millennia of dedicated study and practice. He represented a unique combination: the raw power of a centaur's form, tempered by a highly developed intellect and gentle spirit. It was this blend that made him the perfect, uniquely qualified figure to be the tutor of heroes, capable of teaching them both how to survive and excel in the physical world, and how to navigate the complexities of life, morality, and the divine. A quirky tidbit illustrating his vast learning involves his supposed knowledge of medicinal herbs. Myths sometimes mention specific, obscure herbs that only Chiron knew how to identify and use for particular ailments or antidotes. His knowledge wasn't just theoretical, it was practical and deeply rooted in the natural world of his mountain home, making him a living repository of ancient healing lore. Imagine him pointing out a seemingly pudung ordinary plant and explaining its extraordinary healing properties. Knowledge lost to most others. There's joke number 1. Ah yes, this weed. This is actually a potent cure for heroic-level hangovers, a rare find. Chiron was renowned in Greek mythology for his extensive knowledge and mastery of various disciplines, including healing and medicine, hunting, music, gymnastics, warfare, and prophecy, making him the ultimate tutor and mentor capable of providing a comprehensive education for the greatest Greek heroes. This is our mainstream historical fact, confirming his polymath status. Scholars debate the consistency and emphasis of the subjects attributed to Chiron's teaching across various Greek myths and ancient authors. Did different versions of the myths emphasize different areas of his expertise based on the specific hero being discussed, or the values the author wished to highlight? Did the perceived ideal curriculum for a hero change over time in Greek society? And was Chiron's teaching adapted or depicted differently to reflect this? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, examining how the portrayal of his knowledge might have evolved. Chiron's vast knowledge was the source of his fame, and the reason heroes from all corners of the Greek world would seek him out on Mount Pelion. He wasn't just a teacher, he was the teacher, uniquely equipped to shape the young figures who would go on to define the age of heroes. Joke number 2. You picture him grading papers. Achilles, your spear-throwing technique is excellent, but your lyre playing needs work. See me after class. His quiet life on Pelion was dedicated to cultivating this knowledge and preparing for the pupils who were soon to arrive. Joke number 3. He knew healing, hunting, music, and how to handle a spear. That's like being a doctor, a survivalist, a rock star, and a martial artist all in one. Impressive resume. Chiron possessed immense knowledge, mastery of healing, hunting, music, prophecy, combat, and more. Knowledge cultivated during his long, quiet life on Mount Pelion. But knowledge isn't just for keeping to oneself, particularly when you are immortal and have millennia stretching before you. It's for sharing. And Chiron's most enduring legacy in Greek myth comes directly from his calling to teach. Specifically, to teach the future legends of Greece, the heroes whose names would echo through the ages, the sons of gods and kings who needed shaping. Why were these young heroes, often semi-divine or destined for greatness, sent to live with a centaur on a secluded mountain? They were frequently in need of a unique kind of education, one that couldn't be provided in human cities or royal courts. Many were orphaned. Others had complicated family situations that made traditional upbringing difficult. Some possessed raw potential, immense strength, incredible speed, that needed discipline and guidance. They needed to learn a wide range of skills to survive and succeed in the dangerous, monster-filled, God-interfered mythical world. Not just how to fight, but how to heal, how to think, how to understand the world and their place in it. Chiron's reputation preceded him. He was known throughout the Greek world as the tutor for heroes. Unlike the wild centaurs, his wisdom, impartiality, and gentle nature made him uniquely qualified to mold young, sometimes difficult, personalities. He wasn't just a trainer, he was a mentor, a guide, a father figure to these young men, and occasionally women who were destined for extraordinary, often perilous lives. He was the go-to guy when you had a kid who was half god and needed to learn manners and monster slaying. The arrangement wasn't usually just visiting for a quick lesson or two. Young heroes were typically sent to live with Chiron in his cave on Mount Pelion for a significant period of their youth, undergoing a rigorous and comprehensive apprenticeship in heroism. Imagine packing your bags as a teenager, saying goodbye to your parents or the people raising you, and heading off to boarding school. In a cave, run by a wise, immortal centaur. Joke number 1. Hero School Acceptance Letter. Dear young Perseus, congratulations! You've been accepted to Chiron's Academy on Mount Pelion. Please bring one change of clothes, a sharp sword, and an open mind. Tuition payable in dragon scales or divine favors. The education provided went far beyond just physical training, reflecting Chiron's own broad knowledge. He taught them gymnastics and athletics, how to run, jump, wrestle, and build physical strength and endurance. He instructed them in warfare and combat, how to use swords, spears, shields, and bows, how to fight strategically. But he also taught them healing, music, hunting, astronomy, morality, and justice. It was a holistic education aimed at developing not just powerful warriors, but well-rounded individuals capable of leadership, wisdom, and navigating the complexities of the human and divine worlds. Chiron's peaceful environment on Mount Pelion provided the ideal setting for this intensive education. Away from the distractions and corrupting influences of cities or courts, the heroes in training could focus on their studies and physical training. The mountain provided space for hunting practice, natural resources for learning about healing herbs, and quietude for contemplation and musical study. It was a focused, disciplined life centered around learning and self-improvement, guided by the patient wisdom of their centaur tutor. Over centuries, many of the most famous names in Greek mythology passed through Chiron's unconventional academy. You'll hear about some of them specifically in upcoming sections. Delving into their time, studying with the wise centaur, names like Jason, the future leader of the Argonauts, Achilles, the greatest Greek warrior of the Trojan War, the mighty Heracles, and Asclepius, the future god of medicine, all spent formative years learning at the feet of Chiron. Chiron was the widely recognized and renowned tutor and mentor of many of the greatest heroes in Greek mythology, including prominent figures such as Jason, Achilles, Heracles, and Asclepius, providing them with a comprehensive education, spanning warfare, athletics, healing, music, and morality, necessary for their future heroic exploits. This is our mainstream historical fact, cementing his status as the original hero maker. A quirky tidbit about Chiron's students involves some of the less famous heroes or figures he is said to have taught. Beyond the household names, myths sometimes mention that Chiron also tutored figures like Actaeon, a hunter, tragically transformed into a stag, Aristaeus, a minor deity associated with beekeeping and other arts, and even some prominent mortal figures. This suggests his influence extended beyond the absolute peak-tier heroes, reaching a broader range of individuals seeking exceptional training or wisdom. Imagine him having a surprisingly diverse student body, from future demigod warriors to guys who just wanted to be really good at managing bees. There's joke number 2. All right, class. Today we're learning advanced beekeeping for heroes. Pay attention. It might save your life. Or at least get you honey. Scholars debate the precise process by which heroes became Chiron's pupils. Did Chiron actively seek out promising students? Perhaps using his prophetic abilities to identify those destined for greatness? Or were heroes typically sent to him by their divine parents, like Zeus sending Achilles or other wise figures who recognized his unique qualifications, with Chiron simply accepting those who arrived at his cave? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, questioning the extent of his own agency versus pupils being directed to him by external forces. Chiron's calling to teach the heroes was arguably his most important role in myth, transforming raw potential into the disciplined skill and wisdom needed for their legends. He wasn't just teaching them how to swing a sword, he was shaping the character of the figures who would populate the most famous Greek myths. Joke number 3. You imagine Chiron writing a letter of recommendation. To whom it may concern, please accept young Heracles into your whatever. He's very strong. Sometimes breaks things. Knows knots. Good kid. Mostly. His quiet life on Pelion was the forge where heroes were tempered, learning from the wise Centaur how to navigate their extraordinary destinies. Chiron, the wise and gentle Centaur of Mount Pelion, was known as the teacher of heroes, preparing them for the challenges that awaited them in the tumultuous mythical world. Over centuries, many famous figures passed through his unconventional mountain academy, learning the skills and wisdom necessary for their legendary destinies. Let's start with one whose name is synonymous with adventure and leadership, Jason. Jason was the rightful heir to the throne of Iolcus, but his treacherous uncle, Peleus, had usurped the throne. To keep the young prince safe from his uncle's plotting, Jason was spirited away in his youth and sent to Mount Pelion to be raised and educated by Chiron. Imagine arriving at Chiron's cave as a young boy, perhaps a little frightened, a little confused, leaving behind the comforts and dangers of a royal court for a mountain retreat with a centaur. Jason, the hero who would famously lead the Argonauts on the perilous quest for the Golden Fleece, was sent to be raised and tutored by Chiron on Mount Pelion during his youth, receiving a comprehensive education in the skills and wisdom necessary for his future role as a leader and adventurer. This is our mainstream historical fact, placing Jason firmly among Chiron's most significant pupils. Life for young Jason on Mount Pelion would have been rigorous but also deeply formative. A typical day might involve waking early with the mountain light, practicing physical exercises and combat skills, spear, sword, shield, wrestling, learning about hunting and tracking in the surrounding forests, studying plants and their medicinal properties, practicing music on the lyre under Chiron's guidance, and spending time discussing history, justice, and the ways of the world with the wise Centaur. It was a blend of hard physical training and intellectual and moral development. Sensory details: the crisp morning air on the mountain, the sound of practicing swordplay or archery, the smell of pine and sweat during training, the quiet resonance of the lyre during music lessons, the feel of a scroll or tablet during study. Chiron's curriculum for Jason would have been specifically tailored to prepare him for his destiny, although perhaps not explicitly for the Golden Fleece quest itself until later. As a future leader, Jason needed skills beyond just fighting. Chiron would have taught him about leadership, how to inspire and manage a diverse group of individuals with different personalities and skills, something he would desperately need with the Argonauts. He likely learned about strategy and tactics, both in battle and in negotiation. Navigation would have been crucial. Learning to use the stars and understand the rudimentary geography of the known world to find his way. As the Argonautica involved seafaring, some myths suggest Chiron might have imparted knowledge about shipbuilding or sailing, or at least the principles needed to understand and command a ship's crew. Joke number 1. All right, Jason. Lesson 1. How to convince 50 of the greatest heroes in Greece to get on a boat with you. It's mostly about enthusiasm and downplaying the potential for sea monsters. The interaction between the young prince and the ancient, wise centaur would have been a fascinating dynamic. Jason, perhaps initially raw and untested despite his royal blood, learning patience, discipline, and wisdom from a being who had seen centuries pass and taught generations before him. Chiron, in turn, seeing the potential leader in the young man and guiding him with his characteristic gentleness and knowledge. A quirky tidbit about Jason's time with Chiron comes from variations in the myths about how he was transported to Pelion. Some stories say he was carried there by a horse. Others imply he traveled with a guardian, and some even suggest he was somehow carried by Chiron himself. Imagine a young Jason riding on the back of the wise centaur, making his way up the mountain paths to his unconventional boarding school. There's joke number 2. Rough commute to school back then. Just hop on my back, Jason, mind the hooves. Scholars debate the specific focus and duration of Jason's education under Chiron on Mount Pelion. How long did he stay there? A few years? Or longer? How much of his training was specifically designed to prepare him for the unique challenges of commanding a diverse crew and undertaking the quest for the Golden Fleece, versus being a general education for a future ruler or hero? This is our open scholarly debate phrase. Understanding the depth and specificity of Chiron's curriculum for this particular famous pupil. Chiron's education provided Jason with the blend of practical skills, intellectual understanding, and moral grounding he would desperately need for his epic journey. He learned not just how to use a sword, but how to lead men, how to navigate treacherous waters, both literal and metaphorical, and how to deal with gods, kings, and monsters. Modern aside, it was like getting a combination military academy, business school, and international relations degree, all taught by one very experienced professor who happened to be a centaur. Leaving Chiron's peaceful retreat on Pelion to return to Iolcus and begin his quest would have been a momentous transition. Jason was no longer just a hidden prince. He was a young man equipped with the knowledge and wisdom imparted by the greatest tutor in Greece, ready to face his destiny. Joke number 3. You imagine Chiron giving him a final piece of advice. Remember, Jason, hydration is key, and try not to make too many gods angry. It complicates things. Chiron's lessons were the foundation upon which the legend of Jason and the Argonauts would be built. From shaping a future leader like Jason, preparing him for command and questing. Chiron's Mountain Academy welcomed many other notable pupils destined for greatness, or at least incredible fame. Perhaps even more famous than Jason, destined for glory and tragedy on the plains of Troy, was the swift-footed Achilles. Achilles was the son of Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a sea nymph and a goddess. Thetis knew from prophecies that her son was destined for extraordinary greatness, but also for a short life if he pursued that glory. To give him the best possible preparation for whatever awaited him, and perhaps in an attempt to protect him or guide his formidable nature, young Achilles was sent to be raised and educated by Chiron on Mount Pelion. Imagine a young boy, part god, part mortal, already possessing incredible speed and strength, arriving at the Centaur's cave, a bundle of raw, untamed potential. Achilles, the central and arguably greatest Greek warrior in Homer's epic poem, the Iliad and other myths surrounding the Trojan War, was famously sent to be raised and tutored by Chiron in his youth on Mount Pelion, receiving rigorous training in a wide array of skills including warfare, athletics, healing, and music. This is our mainstream historical fact, solidifying Achilles' time as one of Chiron's most renowned pupils. Achilles' time on Mount Pelion with Chiron would have been intense, focusing heavily on the physical skills necessary for a warrior destined for the greatest of battles. Chiron would have honed Achilles' natural speed, perhaps teaching him specific running techniques across the mountain terrain. Combat training would have been central, mastering the use of the spear, sword, and shield, learning tactics and strategy from a teacher who possessed ancient wisdom in warfare. Imagine the sounds echoing through the mountain air, the clang of wooden swords, the thud of spears hitting targets, the rapid pounding of Achilles' feet during running drills. Sensory details the feel of rough weapon handles, the ache of exertion in your muscles, the sound of focused training, the clean mountain air filling your lungs during exercise. But Chiron's education was never solely about physical prowess. He understood that a great hero needed more than just strength and fighting skill. He would have taught Achilles about healing, practical knowledge vital for anyone who would spend their life in battle. He also famously taught Achilles to play the lyre, softening the young demigod's potentially wild and famously fiery temper with the discipline and harmony of music. This holistic approach was aimed at shaping not just a formidable fighter, but a leader and a more complete individual, trying to temper the potentially destructive aspects of his heroic nature. Myths offer some fascinating, sometimes unusual, details about Achilles' upbringing with Chiron. A particularly striking one is his diet. To build his strength and speed, Chiron reportedly fed young Achilles on a diet of wild animals, including bears, lions, and deer, and specifically on the marrow of these beasts. Imagine a small boy eating the raw marrow of a lion, intended to transfer the animal's strength and ferocity to him. Our quirky tidbit Achilles was famously said to have been fed the marrow of wild animals like bears and lions by Chiron to imbue him with strength and ferocity, a unique and rather intense part of his mythological diet while under the Centaur's tutelage. There's joke number 1. Breakfast of champions apparently. It's raw lion marrow. Suddenly my oatmeal seems a bit bland. The bond between Chiron and Achilles is often depicted as particularly close, almost like that of a father and son. Chiron was not just his teacher, he was his guardian and mentor during his formative years, providing the guidance and stability that perhaps his somewhat distant divine mother could not. Achilles deeply respected and loved Chiron, a relationship that stands out in the often turbulent family dynamics of Greek myths. Scholars debate the extent to which Chiron's education for Achilles was specifically geared towards preparing him for his fated, tragic role in the Trojan War. Given Chiron's knowledge of prophecy as we discussed, did he foresee Achilles' short, glorious destiny at Troy? And if so, how did that influence the curriculum? Did he emphasize certain skills that would be particularly useful in a long siege, or try to impart wisdom that might somehow mitigate or prepare Achilles for his fate? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, questioning the influence of foresight on the education of a fated hero. Leaving Chiron's peaceful mountain home to join the Greek forces heading for Troy would have been the moment Achilles' education met his destiny. He left Pelion as a young man forged by the wise Centaur's training, physically formidable, skilled in combat, but also possessing knowledge of healing, music, and perhaps a degree of self-awareness imparted by his unique teacher. Modern aside, it was like graduating from an elite, ancient military academy run by a mythical creature, fully prepared for the world's biggest, most epic conflict. Chiron's role in shaping Achilles was monumental. He took the raw, powerful son of a goddess and a king and honed him into the legendary warrior whose rage and skill would define the Trojan War. Joke number 2. You imagine Chiron polishing Achilles' shield one last time. There you go, kid. Try not to lose this. Or your temper. His quiet years of teaching Achilles on Pelion were the essential prelude to one of the most famous stories in all of mythology. Joke number 3. You picture Chiron sending him off to war. And remember everything I taught you, especially the part about not picking fights with river gods. Trust me on that one. From honing the skills of future leaders like Jason and forging the greatest warrior like Achilles, Chiron's reach as a mentor extended to many heroes, shaping them for their destinies. Among his pupils and eventual associates was arguably the most famous, the mightiest, and certainly one of the most eventful figures in Greek mythology, Heracles. Heracles, the son of Zeus, known for his incredible strength, his legendary 12 labors, and a life often marked by tragedy and violent outbursts, had significant encounters with Chiron. Myths vary, but it's generally agreed that Heracles, too, spent time as a youth on Mount Pelion, receiving education from the wise Centaur. Chiron likely taught the young, immensely strong demigod skills that complemented his raw power, perhaps refining his archery, teaching him boxing, or imparting wisdom to help him manage his formidable, sometimes uncontrollable nature. Heracles, the most famous and powerful Greek hero, known for his 12 labors, is depicted in Greek mythology as having significant encounters with Chiron, potentially being one of his pupils in youth and later tragically wounding Chiron during a conflict with other centaurs. This is our mainstream historical fact, highlighting the dual nature of their connection. However, their most famous and ultimately tragic interaction occurred later, during Heracles' adult life, specifically during one of his 12 labors, the task of capturing the Erymanthian boar. While pursuing the boar, Heracles sought refuge or hospitality at the cave of Pholus. Another centaur who lived nearby on Mount Pelion and, crucially, was depicted as relatively more civilized and friendly towards humans than most centaurs. Partly due to his friendship with Chiron, Pholus hospitably entertained Heracles. During their meal, Heracles asked for wine. Pholus was hesitant. He possessed a jar of wine that belonged collectively to all the centaurs, a sacred communal store, and opening it would attract the others. Heracles, perhaps insistent or unaware of the consequences, persuaded him. When the jar was opened, the aroma of the strong centaur wine wafted through the mountain air, quickly drawing the other, wilder centaurs to Pholus's cave. The arrival of the other centaurs quickly turned violent, as was their nature when exposed to wine. They were enraged that the communal wine had been opened, particularly for a human. A chaotic brawl ensued between Heracles and the wild centaurs, a scene of flying furniture, wrestling bodies, and the sounds of combat echoing through the mountain. Sensory details the initial rich smell of the opened wine, quickly replaced by the smells of sweat, dust, and fear, the sounds of shouting, snarling, the thud of blows, the splintering of wood outside Pholus's cave. Heracles, with his incredible strength and skill honed by Chiron and his own divine nature, defended himself fiercely, driving the attacking centaurs back with his club and arrows. And it was during this violent, messy encounter that the tragedy involving Chiron unfolded. Chiron, hearing the commotion, likely came to investigate or perhaps tried to intervene to stop the fighting, using his wisdom and authority as the respected sage of Pelion. But in the confusion of the battle, quite or by a terrible stroke of fate, he was accidentally struck by one of Heracles' arrows. Crucially, the arrow had been dipped in the venom of the Lernaean Hydra, another monster Heracles had slain during his labors. The Hydra's venom was incredibly potent and instantly fatal to mortals, and its touch caused agonizing, incurable wounds. Chiron, being immortal, could not die from the poison, but the wound inflicted by the Hydra-venomed arrow caused him unimaginable, constant agony. He was struck not by an enemy, but by the accidental action of a former pupil, the very hero whose strength he might have helped refine. Quirky tidbit. Some versions of the myth specifically state that Heracles' arrow hit Chiron in the knee or foot, making the wound particularly debilitating and a constant source of pain in his lower, equine body. This encounter highlights the stark contrast between the wild, chaotic world of heroic exploits and the peaceful, ordered life Chiron cultivated on Pelion. Even in his sanctuary, violence and tragedy could intrude, brought indirectly by the actions of his own student and the nature of the wild centaurs he was so different from. Joke number 1. You imagine Chiron watching the brawl approach. Oh dear, looks like someone brought wine. And possibly chaos. It's always chaos when Heracles is involved. Scholars debate the primary nature of the relationship between Heracles and Chiron. While myths generally agree Heracles was a pupil in youth, do his most significant mythological interactions with Chiron predominantly revolve around this later tragic incident with the poisoned arrow? Or was the teacher-pupil relationship more central to his story? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, assessing the defining aspect of their connection. Chiron, despite being immortal and wise, was not immune to the misfortunes of the world of heroes and monsters. His encounter with Heracles, intended perhaps as a simple visit or a moment of refuge, became the turning point in his long life, leading to suffering that even his profound knowledge of healing could not cure. Joke number 2. You picture Chiron tending his herbs before the fight. This one's good for bruises. This one for snake bites. Nothing. Unfortunately, a very accidental hydra venom arrow wounds from former students. The meeting between the mightiest hero and the wisest centaur ended in a way neither could have foreseen. A tragic consequence of violence and fate. It marked the beginning of a new, agonizing chapter in Chiron's otherwise largely peaceful, immortal existence. Joke number 3. You imagine Heracles later trying to apologize. Sorry, Teach didn't see you there. Arrow kinda just flew. And the hydra venom. Yeah, my bad. Chiron's pupils included mighty warriors and great leaders, shaping the heroes of the physical and political world, preparing them for quests and battles. But his vast knowledge extended far beyond combat and command. Among his most significant students was one who would dedicate his life to the art of preserving and restoring life. Learning from Chiron the secrets of healing and medicine, Asclepius. Asclepius was a figure destined for greatness in the realm of medicine. He was the son of the great god Apollo, who himself was associated with healing among many other things like music and prophecy. Skills he shared with Chiron. Asclepius's mother was a mortal princess named Coronis. Due to complicated mythological circumstances, which, in short, involved Apollo's divine anger, Asclepius was rescued from his mother's funeral pyre by Apollo and entrusted to Chiron on Mount Pelion to be raised and educated. Given Apollo's own connection to healing and Chiron's renowned mastery of the art, it was a natural partnership. Asclepius, the son of the god Apollo and a mortal princess, who would become the most famous healer in Greek mythology and eventually be deified as the god of medicine, was specifically sent to be tutored by Chiron on Mount Pelion, receiving comprehensive instruction in the art of healing, medicine, and surgery. This is our mainstream historical fact, cementing Asclepius's place as Chiron's most prominent student in the medical arts. Asclepius's time on Mount Pelion would have been deeply focused on the healing aspects of Chiron's curriculum. Imagine young Asclepius, perhaps initially overwhelmed by the vastness of the mountain environment, learning to identify countless different plants and their medicinal properties. He would accompany Chiron on his excursions through the forests and meadows of Pelion, carefully studying the leaves, roots, and flowers that could be used to treat various ailments. Sensory details the diverse smells of crushed herbs, some sweet, some bitter, some pungent. The feel of rubbing different leaves or bark between your fingers. The visual of identifying plants amidst the green of the mountain. Chiron would teach him how to gather these herbs at the right time and in the right way, how to dry and store them, and how to prepare them into poultices, infusions, salves, and antidotes. He would learn how to treat different types of injuries, cuts, bruises, broken bones, burns, even wounds inflicted by monsters or poisoned weapons. He would learn to diagnose illnesses based on symptoms and apply the appropriate remedies. His training might even have included some understanding of anatomy, perhaps gained through observing and understanding the bodies of animals he and Chiron hunted. Sensory details, the feel of soft bandages, the smell of boiling herbs, the visual of preparing a poultice. Chiron's medical knowledge was profound, combining practical experience gained over centuries with perhaps a touch of divine understanding. Having been tutored by Apollo himself, he passed on this vast knowledge to Asclepius, who was a uniquely gifted and dedicated student, absorbing his teacher's lessons and quickly becoming a master healer in his own right. The mentor-pupil dynamic here was centered on the life-giving art of medicine, a quiet contrast to the more violent training of warriors. Under Chiron's tutelage, Asclepius's skill grew to legendary proportions. He became so adept at healing that he could cure any illness and treat any injury. Eventually, his skill grew so great that he could even raise the dead back to life. This power, however, disrupted the natural order of the cosmos, angering Hades, the god of the underworld, who saw his domain being emptied. Zeus, fearing the imbalance, ultimately struck Asclepius down with a thunderbolt, though he was later deified, becoming the god of medicine himself. This dramatic turn of events, triggered by Asclepius's extraordinary healing ability, highlights the immense power of the knowledge that Chiron had passed down. A quirky tidbit about Asclepius's legacy involves his symbol. The famous symbol of medicine, the staff entwined with a single serpent, the rod of Asclepius, is associated with him. While the exact origin of this symbol is debated, one interpretation links the snake to renewal and healing shedding its skin, and another relates to a practice of using snakes in ancient healing rituals associated with Asclepius's cult. Some have speculated that this use of snakes might have roots in the ancient healing knowledge passed down to him by Chiron, perhaps involving the medicinal use of snake venom or other serpent-related lore. Although this is not explicitly stated in the core myths, imagine Chiron teaching Asclepius the surprising healing properties of snake venom. There's joke number 1. Now, Asclepius, for snake bites, you'll need this herb. Unless it's this kind of snake, then you might need a tiny bit of its own venom. It's complicated. Scholars debate the relative contribution of Chiron's mortal, albeit wise and immortal teaching, versus Apollo's divine lineage to Asclepius's legendary healing prowess. Was Asclepius primarily a great healer because he was the son of a healing god, with Chiron's role being that of a crucial earthly teacher and guide? Or did Chiron possess unique medical knowledge, perhaps inherited or developed over his long life, that truly elevated Asclepius's skill beyond what his divine parentage alone would have provided? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, understanding the true source and nature of the extraordinary medical knowledge transmitted. Asclepius's time learning from Chiron on Mount Pelion was foundational to his legendary career as the greatest healer of the ancient world. He absorbed Chiron's vast medical wisdom, transforming it into the power to save lives and challenge death itself. Joke number 2. You imagine Chiron giving Asclepius his final exam? All right, Asclepius, demonstrate how you would cure a headache caused by an angry god hitting you with a thunderbolt. No. Okay, maybe just a broken ankle then. Chiron's quiet life of learning on Pelion had a direct and profound impact on the health and well-being of the mythical world, through the hands of his most famous medical student. Joke number 3. He taught the god of medicine. Pretty good for a guy who probably couldn't even prescribe you a comfortable saddle. From shaping the greatest healer in Asclepius, passing on vital medical knowledge that could cure any ill, Chiron's influence extended across many vital skills. His mountain academy wasn't a one-trick pony, focused only on monster-slaying techniques or basic swordplay. Chiron's education for his heroic pupils was comprehensive, preparing them for the full, unpredictable spectrum of their legendary lives, encompassing arts and sciences alongside the necessary physical prowess. Chiron understood that being a hero wasn't just about strength in battle. It required a well-rounded skill set to navigate a complex world populated by gods, monsters, mortals, and intricate social rules. His curriculum reflected this holistic view. Music was an essential part of a hero's education under Chiron. He was skilled with the lyre, a stringed instrument similar to a small harp, and he taught his pupils how to play. But it was more than just learning tunes. Music in ancient Greece was linked to harmony, discipline, and even rhetoric. Chiron likely taught his students about the power of music to soothe tempers useful for heroes like Achilles, to charm gods or even beasts, and perhaps to enhance their public speaking or poetic abilities. Imagine the sound of several young heroes practicing the lyre in Chiron's cave, the notes echoing in the quiet mountain air. Sensory details the sound of lyre strings being plucked, the vibration of the instrument, the resonance of the music in the cave or on the mountainside. Hunting was another key subject. While centaurs were naturally skilled hunters, Chiron taught it as a discipline, emphasizing strategy, tracking, and skill with the bow and arrow. This wasn't just for survival. Hunting was seen as noble, teaching patience, stealth, and knowledge of the natural world. He would take his pupils out into the forests of Mount Pelion, teaching them to read tracks, move silently, and use a bow effectively. Sensory details the feel of drawing a bowstring taut, the scent of pine needles and damp earth in the forest, the quiet concentration of tracking prey. And, of course, warfare and combat were central to the training of heroes. Chiron taught his students how to use a variety of weapons: the spear, the sword, the shield, and archery, complementing the hunting skills. He instructed them in tactics, strategy, and understanding their opponents, whether human warriors or terrifying monsters. This was practical training for the dangers they would face. Imagine the sounds of training: the clack of practice weapons, the thud of blows on shields, the focused grunts of exertion. Sensory details the feel of a sword hilt in your hand, the weight of a shield on your arm, the sound of metal or wood striking. Beyond these core physical and artistic skills, Chiron's curriculum could include other areas depending on the hero's needs or Chiron's own vast interests. His knowledge of prophecy and astronomy might mean lessons on reading the stars for navigation, especially useful for Jason's voyage or understanding omens. Gymnastics and athletics honed their physical conditioning and agility. And underlying all his teaching was that bedrock of wisdom, justice, and morality, shaping their character and helping them navigate the ethical dilemmas heroes often faced. This blend of disciplines was unique. While a human tutor might teach rhetoric or philosophy, and a military instructor might teach combat, only Chiron offered this comprehensive package: the physical prowess of a centaur combined with divine-linked wisdom and a mastery of both practical and intellectual arts. Chiron's curriculum for his heroic pupils was notably broad and holistic, encompassing not only essential warrior skills like combat, archery, and hunting, but also arts and sciences such as music, healing as seen with Asclepius, gymnastics, and potentially knowledge of prophecy and justice, reflecting a comprehensive ideal for heroic education in myth. This is our mainstream historical fact, summarizing the breadth of his teaching. A quirky tidbit about Chiron's broader education involves specific, perhaps unusual, applications he might have taught. Given his mastery of both music and nature, some myths hint at his ability to charm animals with his lyre playing. It's not a stretch to imagine him teaching a hero like Achilles or Jason how to use music not just for pleasure, but perhaps to soothe wild horses, gain the favor of forest creatures, or even distract minor monsters. Imagine a young hero practicing the lyre, being told, "Yes, that's lovely. Jason might not defeat a hydra, but it could make a grumpy bear slightly more agreeable." There's joke number 1. Lesson plans for Chiron: 9 a.m. advanced monster slaying, 10 a.m. herbal remedies for monster-induced wounds, 11 a.m. lyre practice, focus on bear charming melodies. Scholars debate how much Chiron's diverse mythical curriculum truly reflected or influenced actual ancient Greek ideals of education for young men of status, minus the obvious mythical elements. Did the myths draw from contemporary thoughts on what constituted a well-rounded education, balancing physical training, intellectual pursuits, music, and moral guidance? Or was Chiron's unique, broad curriculum primarily a mythological construct, designed to make him the ultimate unparalleled teacher figure needed for the hero narratives? Rather than a realistic depiction of ancient pedagogy, this is our open scholarly debate phrase: Examining the relationship between myth and reality in his portrayal as an educator, Chiron's diverse curriculum created well-rounded heroes. Capable of more than just swinging a sword, they were equipped to face a world that demanded not just strength, but also wisdom, adaptability, and skill in navigating complex situations. Joke number 2. You picture a hero arriving at a challenge. Right, do I use my sword? Or try charming it with my lyre? Thanks, Chiron, for the options. His mountain school was unique in its breadth and depth, preparing pupils for every facet of their extraordinary destinies. Joke number 3. You imagine a hero trying to explain his education. Yeah, I went to hero school. My teacher was a centaur. I learned fighting, but also interpretive dance and advanced basket weaving. Hero stuff. Chiron's comprehensive curriculum shaped the heroes who lived with him on Mount Pelion, from mastering the lyre to handling a spear, preparing them for the challenges of the mythical world. But his quiet home wasn't exclusively populated by his long-term live-in students. Due to his widespread fame as the wisest, most knowledgeable, and most benevolent of centaurs, Pelion received frequent visitors seeking his counsel. Healing or knowledge, word of Chiron's wisdom spread throughout Greece and beyond. Heroes who had perhaps trained with him in their youth might return later in life for specific advice before a difficult quest. Gods themselves, acknowledging his unique status and knowledge, especially in areas like healing and prophecy, might seek him out or entrust him with tasks, such as Apollo bringing his infant son Asclepius to be raised and taught. Other mythical figures, or even sometimes mortals facing extraordinary circumstances, might make the arduous journey up Mount Pelion to find his secluded cave. Imagine deciding you need the help or advice of a wise centaur living on a mountain. It wasn't a journey for the faint of heart. You would have to travel to Thessaly, find Mount Pelion, and then ascend its slopes, perhaps guided by local knowledge or simply following rumors of the centaur's dwelling. The paths would be rough, the terrain challenging, the climb tiring. This effort underscores the value placed on Chiron's wisdom. People undertook significant journeys simply to reach him. Sensory details the sound of your footsteps on the mountain path, the feel of exertion as you climb, the scent of pine and wild herbs on the air, the visual of the mountain slopes stretching around you. Finally, after climbing, navigating the wilderness, you would arrive at the entrance of Chiron's cave. Stepping from the bright mountain light into the cooler air of his dwelling, you would find a space that, while part of the mountain, felt welcoming and ordered, filled with the quiet presence of study and learning. Chiron, unlike other centaurs who might greet strangers with hostility, would receive visitors with characteristic gentleness and hospitality. Sensory details the contrast in air temperature and light entering the cave, the smell of drying herbs inside, the calm, deep sound of Chiron's voice greeting you. Visitors came seeking a variety of services that reflected Chiron's diverse knowledge. Many sought his skills as a healer, coming with wounds or illnesses that mortal physicians couldn't cure, or needing antidotes for poisons. Others came for his wisdom and counsel, facing difficult decisions or moral dilemmas in their lives as heroes or rulers. Some sought his knowledge of prophecy or astronomy, wanting to understand their fate or interpret omens. Gods might consult him on matters related to the mortal world or other divine affairs. He might share his knowledge of specific herbs, offer guidance based on his understanding of justice, or simply listen and offer a wise perspective drawn from his long life and deep learning. These visits were usually focused on a specific need or question, different from the long-term, comprehensive education provided to his live-in pupils. A quirky tidbit about visitors involves unexpected guests or strange requests. While heroes and gods were common, some myths imply less conventional visitors might seek him out. Perhaps nature spirits, minor deities, or even beings needing help with strange, myth-specific problems. Imagine a minor river god showing up asking for advice on how to deal with noisy nymphs, or a satyr needing a particularly complex poultice for a thorn in his hoof. There's joke number 1. Yes, the great centaur Chiron. He heals. He teaches. He occasionally mediates disputes between dryads and grumpy squirrels. A man of many talents. Or a traveler might bring a strange or unusual gift as an offering for his hospitality or wisdom, reflecting the diverse corners of the world they came from. Due to his widespread and unparalleled reputation for wisdom, knowledge especially in healing and prophecy, justice, and benevolence, Chiron's secluded home on Mount Pelion was frequently visited by various significant figures from Greek mythology, including major gods like Apollo, renowned heroes, and others seeking his specific advice, healing, or knowledge, making his cave a unique nexus point in the mythological world. This is our mainstream historical fact, highlighting his importance as a destination for wisdom seekers. Scholars debate the accessibility of Chiron's wisdom to casual visitors versus his dedicated, long-term pupils. While myths show him helping those who sought him out, did he share his most profound teachings or most powerful secrets like the deepest healing arts or the most intricate prophecies only with those who committed to living with him and undergoing his full educational program? Or was his knowledge freely available to any worthy individual who made the journey to Pelion? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, questioning how widely he shared his vast learning and the nature of interactions with different types of visitors. Having these diverse figures pass through his peaceful mountain home connected Chiron, despite his chosen seclusion, to the wider mythological world. His cave was a place where gods and mortals, heroes and sages, intersected, drawn by the power of his wisdom. Joke number 2. You imagine him keeping a guest book. Guest number 437. Heracles, reason for visit needed directions. Also, accidentally started a brawl, left behind some mild property damage. These visits were a testament to his far-reaching reputation and the high value placed on his unique knowledge in a world often driven by brute force or divine decree. Joke number 3. You picture Apollo dropping off infant Asclepius. Right, Chiron, he's yours. Try not to teach him anything too disruptive to the natural order. Thanks. Chiron's home on Mount Pelion welcomed a stream of visitors, from gods to heroes, all seeking his wisdom and healing, connecting his quiet retreat to the wider mythological world. But despite these visits, there was a fundamental aspect of Chiron's existence that set him apart not just from other centaurs, but from the vast majority of his pupils and visitors, making his life on Pelion an experience almost unimaginable to them, his immortality. Unlike the mortal heroes he taught, whose lives, even if long by human standards, were fleeting sparks destined to burn out, Chiron was immortal. As the son of the Titan Cronus and the nymph Philyra, he inherited a divine nature that meant he did not age, was not subject to disease, and could not die a typical death. He simply was, existing through the centuries, watching the world change around him while remaining essentially unchanged himself. Imagine living for centuries, perhaps even millennia. You would see seasons turn into millennia. Generations of trees grow from saplings to ancient giants and eventually fall. Mountain streams subtly change their course over vast stretches of time. The very rocks of Pelion weather and shift almost imperceptibly. Human civilizations would rise and fall in the distance. Kingdoms would be born and die. Heroes would stride across the world stage for a brief, glorious period, and then pass into legend, while you remained on your peaceful mountain, teaching the grandchildren, or great-grandchildren, of your former students. Sensory details the feeling of countless seasons passing over your skin, the subtle changes in the scent of the air over centuries, the visual of landscapes evolving at a pace imperceptible to mortals. This long perspective must have profoundly shaped Chiron's wisdom. Having seen patterns of human behavior repeat across countless generations, witness the consequences of choices play out over vast stretches of time. Observe the rise and fall of power and the enduring cycles of nature. He possessed a depth of understanding that no mortal could ever hope to attain. His wisdom wasn't just learned from books or teachers, it was forged in the crucible of endless time, polished by observing history unfold before him. Modern aside, it's like having lived through every historical period you've ever read about, and being able to spot the exact moment when things started to go wrong for a civilization based on patterns you saw 2,000 years ago. His eternal existence on Pelion, focused on learning, contemplation, and teaching, was a unique experience of time. While the world of gods could be fraught with eternal power struggles and the world of mortals filled with the urgency of short lives and dramatic events, Chiron lived a relatively quiet, constant existence. His peaceful retirement wasn't just about the location, it was about the internal experience of eternal time, spent in purpose and learning, away from the more demanding or chaotic aspects that immortality might otherwise bring, like divine politics or endless, pointless wandering. He saw his heroic pupils arrive as young, raw potential, spend a few formative years learning from him, and then depart to live out their short, intense destinies. He would hear tales of their triumphs and tragedies, their quests and battles, their loves and losses, and eventually, news of their deaths. And then, perhaps decades later, a young descendant, showing promise, might arrive at his cave, ready to learn, and the cycle would begin again, carrying the echoes of the past students within the new. Joke number 1. Ah yes, young Perseus II. Takes after his grandfather, needs work on swordplay, but very enthusiastic, just like old Perseus. A quirky tidbit illustrating his long life and different perception of time might involve his memory. Myths suggest Chiron possessed an encyclopedic memory, recalling events and individuals from ages long past with perfect clarity. He could speak of a time when the Titans still walked the earth more freely, or recount the deeds of heroes from forgotten eras. Imagine asking him about something that happened centuries ago, and him recalling it as if it were last week. There's joke number 2. Remember that whole Titanomachy thing, Wild Times? Seems like just yesterday. Though I could be misremembering, it was a few thousand years ago. Chiron was unique among centaurs and many mythical beings for his immortality, a trait inherited from his divine parentage, which profoundly shaped his ability to accumulate vast knowledge and wisdom over centuries and serve as a constant, knowledgeable figure in the ever-changing world of mortals and the dramatic, often short-lived lives of heroes. This is our mainstream historical fact, emphasizing the link between his immortality, wisdom, and role. Scholars debate the psychological implications of Chiron's immortality in myth. How did living for centuries, seeing everyone he cared for grow old and die, affect his perspective and emotional state? Was his famous wisdom primarily a result of experiencing vast stretches of time and observing the cycles of history and nature? Or was his inherently wise and gentle nature the primary factor, with immortality merely providing the opportunity and context to gather and apply knowledge on an unprecedented scale? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, delving into the potential mental landscape of an immortal observer. His immortal existence on Pelion was, in its own way, a unique kind of peaceful life, defined by the quiet passage of time, the accumulation of knowledge, and the continuous process of shaping young potential into heroic reality. It was a life of purpose lived outside the normal constraints of mortal time. Joke number 3. You picture him looking at his schedule. Teaching Achilles this decade, Jason the next. Immortality really fills up the calendar. But this eternal existence, usually a gift, would eventually become intertwined with a terrible burden. Chiron's long life on Mount Pelion was largely one of peaceful wisdom, teaching, and observing the quiet passage of time. His immortality, inherited from his divine father, seemed like a gift, granting him endless years for learning, guiding heroes, and living in his serene mountain home. But this eternal existence, usually a blessing, became tragically intertwined with a terrible burden, stemming from that unfortunate accidental encounter with Heracles and the other wild centaurs we discussed earlier. During that chaotic brawl at Pholus's cave, Heracles, defending himself, accidentally wounded Chiron with an arrow. But this was no ordinary arrow. It had been dipped in the venom of the Lernaean Hydra, a monstrous serpentine creature Heracles had previously slain. The Hydra's venom was extraordinarily potent, instantly fatal to any mortal and causing agonizing, burning pain with the slightest touch. For a mortal, such a wound would have meant a swift, albeit horrific, death. But Chiron was not mortal. He was immortal. And this is where the tragedy and the terrible paradox unfolded. The Hydra's venom was a poison so potent that even Chiron's vast, unparalleled knowledge of healing could not cure the wound it inflicted. There was no herb, no poultice, no treatment known to gods or mortals that could remove the venom's effects or heal the damage it caused to an immortal being. The consequence was horrifying, constant, agonizing, unending pain. The wound did not kill him, but it burned and tormented him without cease. His immortality, the very trait that should have protected him from death and decay, instead trapped him in a state of perpetual suffering. Imagine pain so intense it is unbearable, and knowing that this pain will never lessen, will never end, will simply continue for eternity. It is a cruel twist of fate, turning the gift of endless life into an endless curse. Sensory details imagine a burning pain deep in the muscle or bone, the inability to find a comfortable position for even a moment, the cold sweat of agony. The contrast of this physical torment with the peaceful, beautiful surroundings of his mountain home. His serene cave on Mount Pelion, the sanctuary of wisdom and learning, became a place overshadowed by suffering. The quiet sounds of nature, the rustling leaves, the flowing water, were drowned out by the internal screams of unending agony. Teaching, studying, contemplating, all the activities that defined his peaceful life would have become incredibly difficult, almost impossible, while constantly being tormented by such profound pain. His students and visitors, perhaps hearing of his plight, would have come to his cave not just for wisdom, but perhaps hoping his own healing skills, or theirs like Asclepius, could cure him. But even the future god of medicine was helpless against the Hydra's venom impacting an immortal being. It highlights the venom's unique potency and the specific vulnerability it exploited in Chiron's divine nature. A quirky tidbit about the Hydra's venom involves its almost supernatural persistence. Myths emphasize that anything the venom touched was permanently poisoned or destroyed in a way that defied normal remedies. For Chiron, an immortal being whose body should have been able to eventually purge or overcome any natural poison, the Hydra's venom represented an unnatural, inescapable corruption that bypassed his immortality's defenses, specifically designed in the context of the myth to be lethal to the most powerful beings. It was a poison tailored by fate for ultimate agonizing effect. There's joke number one. Turns out immortal doesn't mean immune to really nasty fictional monster venom. Good to know. Chiron, the immortal centaur renowned for his healing abilities, suffered an incurable and excruciatingly agonizing wound from an arrow poisoned with the venom of the Lernaean Hydra, accidentally shot by his former pupil Heracles, which, due to his immortality, did not result in his death but instead trapped him in a state of perpetual, unending physical torment. This is our mainstream historical fact, outlining the tragic turn his life took. The paradox of his situation, immortal life cursed by unending pain, is a powerful theme in Greek mythology. Scholars debate the mythological implications of Chiron's incurable suffering as an immortal. What does this unique fate convey about the nature of immortality in Greek myth? Is it meant to show that even divine life has its vulnerabilities, or that some forms of suffering are so profound they can transcend even eternal being? Does it comment on the limits of even profound knowledge like his healing arts when faced with a specific, fated affliction? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, exploring the deeper meaning of his tragic state. The constant, unending pain transformed Chiron's existence. His peaceful life on Pelion became a testament to endurance in the face of unbearable suffering. The wisdom that came from centuries of observation was now shadowed by the immediate reality of perpetual agony. Joke number 2. You imagine him trying to meditate the pain away. Focus on the inner peace. Ignore the screaming nerve endings. No. Focus. The desire for release from this torment would eventually become overwhelming, leading to a choice only an immortal could make. Joke number 3. You picture him looking at the heavens, sighing. Well, this wasn't in the immortal welcome packet. The paradox was cruel immortality meant unending pain. Chiron, the wise centaur, master healer who could cure others and teach the art of medicine, was trapped by a wound even his vast knowledge could not touch, condemned to perpetual agony by the very divine nature that made him unique and allowed him to accumulate such wisdom. For centuries, perhaps, he endured this torment, his peaceful life on Pelion overshadowed by the constant, burning agony of the Hydra's venom. But even in this darkest hour, his story held one final extraordinary twist, leading to his ultimate release. For a mortal, this level of pain would have quickly brought the release of death. But Chiron could not die. His immortal essence kept him alive, conscious, and suffering every moment. He was a prisoner in his own body, tortured by a wound that defied the natural order. Over time, the unending pain became unbearable. The gift of immortality, the source of his long life and accumulated wisdom, was now a curse, trapping him in a living hell. He yearned for the torment to end, for the peace that mortality would bring. And because he was immortal, born of a Titan, a unique solution was possible for him, one unavailable to mortals. Immortality in Greek myth was typically an intrinsic part of a being's nature. Gods were immortal. Certain other mythical creatures were immortal. It wasn't something that could usually be given away or exchanged. But in Chiron's unique case, perhaps due to his specific lineage or a special dispensation, the possibility arose. He could relinquish his immortality, suffering from an incurable wound that caused him unending pain due to his immortal nature. Chiron, the wise centaur, ultimately chose to give up his immortality to gain release from his torment, offering this divine gift in exchange for the freedom of the Titan Prometheus. This is our mainstream historical fact, detailing the central event of his retirement story. Prometheus was a complex figure, a Titan, a creator and benefactor of humanity, famously stealing fire from the gods to give to mortals, who was terribly punished by Zeus for his defiance. His punishment was eternal, chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains. An eagle sent daily to eat his liver, which would then grow back, only to be eaten again the next day. A torment that was set to last forever. However, myths foretold that Prometheus could only be freed if an immortal chose to die in his place, thus satisfying the cosmic balance or fulfilling a specific condition set by Zeus. Chiron, in his agony, and perhaps with his characteristic wisdom and compassion, saw a way for mutual release. He was an immortal who wished to die to end his suffering. Prometheus was a Titan who could not die but needed an immortal to take his place among the dead, or simply give up their immortality to fulfill the condition for his release. Depending on the version of the myth, Chiron willingly offered his immortality to Prometheus. The exact mechanics of this exchange are left vague in the myths. Was it a literal transfer of divine essence, or simply an agreement ratified by the gods? But the outcome is clear. Chiron relinquished his immortality, becoming mortal, or at least no longer subject to unending life. This act fulfilled the condition for Prometheus's release from his eternal punishment. Heracles, sometimes involved in this part of the myth too, might have freed Prometheus from his chains after the exchange occurred. The significance of Chiron's choice cannot be overstated. He gave up the very thing that made him unique, the source of his vast knowledge and long perspective, the trait that placed him among the divine, solely to end his own suffering and, in many versions, to free another being from their own eternal torment. It was the ultimate act of selflessness, compassion, and perhaps a final, profound act of wisdom. recognizing that even immortality is not worth unending agony. It was a choice for peace. The moment of release, the fading of the pain, the acceptance of mortality would have been profound. The burning agony that had consumed his existence would finally cease. The physical torment would subside, leaving behind quiet. This is the surprisingly peaceful retirement the title speaks of. Not a retirement from life in the traditional sense, but a release from unending suffering into the peace of mortality and eventual rest. Sensory details the sudden absence of burning pain, the feeling of muscles relaxing after perpetual tension, the quiet calm settling over his being, the peace in his final moments. A quirky tidbit about the exchange involves the specific requirement for Prometheus's release. Some myths state that not just any immortal would do. The immortal who replaced him had to be willing to enter the realm of Hades, the underworld. Chiron, giving up his immortality, essentially became mortal and faced the prospect of death, fulfilling this specific condition. It wasn't just a magical swap, it involved embracing the ultimate mortal fate. There's joke number 2. So I just need an immortal volunteer to take my place in Tartarus. Anyone know how about a nice immortal centaur? Scholars debate the ethical and philosophical implications of Chiron's decision to relinquish his immortality. In a mythology where gods cling fiercely to their eternal life, and mortals strive for even a taste of immortality, what does Chiron's willingness to give it up say about the mythical perception of eternal life, especially when coupled with suffering? Was it a noble sacrifice, a pragmatic choice to escape the unbearable, or a commentary on the limits of even divine existence? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, examining the deeper meaning of his final, defining choice. Chiron's final act was one of profound choice and selflessness, transforming his suffering into a form of peace and enabling the freedom of a key figure in myth. He chose release over unending agony, mortality over immortal torment. Joke number 3. You picture him taking his final breath. Well, that's better. Much, much better. It was a unique ending to a unique life. A quiet, final act of a sage who ultimately found peace not in endless time, but in letting go of it. Chiron, the wise and gentle centaur, found his release from unending pain, giving up his immortality in a profound act of selflessness and choice, exchanging eternal suffering for the peace of mortality. His long, extraordinary life on Mount Pelion, filled with wisdom, teaching, healing, and compassion, had reached its end. But while his physical presence faded from the mountain, his story wasn't finished. The gods, witnessing his suffering, his virtue, and his unique sacrifice, saw fit to grant him a different kind of eternal remembrance, one that would place him permanently in the heavens. Out of respect for the wise centaur, and perhaps acknowledging the unique tragedy of his fate and the selflessness of his final act, the gods often attributed to Zeus himself. Despite Cronus being Chiron's father, honored him by placing his image among the stars. He was transformed into a constellation, a celestial tribute to his enduring legacy. That constellation is Centaurus, representing a centaur figure in the night sky. Looking up at the stars, you can, with a little imagination and knowledge of the star patterns, trace the outline of a centaur, forever positioned in the heavens. It is a permanent commemoration of Chiron's time on Earth, a way for his image to be remembered long after the age of heroes had passed into myth. The significance of being placed among the stars, a process called katasterism in Greek myth, was immense. It was a form of immortalization, a permanent recognition of one's importance, virtue, or deeds. For Chiron, it commemorated his unique wisdom, his role as the teacher of heroes, his benevolence, and his ultimate sacrifice in choosing to give up his precious immortality to find peace and facilitate Prometheus's freedom. It was a divine acknowledgement of his exceptional nature. The constellation itself is sometimes depicted in ways that symbolize aspects of Chiron. It shows a centaur figure, often depicted running across the sky, or sometimes shown aiming a bow, though the constellation associated with archery is more commonly Sagittarius. Myths vary, and some link Centaurus to Chiron's skill with the bow. Regardless of the precise posture, it represents the wise centaur, eternally traversing the cosmos. It feels fitting that Chiron, who possessed great knowledge of astrology and taught his pupils about the stars, would ultimately find his place among them. He studied the heavens from his peaceful mountain home on Pelion, interpreting their movements and perhaps their meaning. And now he is part of the very cosmos he observed and taught about. Modern aside, it's a beautiful blend of myth and early astronomy, showing how ancient cultures found stories and meaning in the patterns of the night sky. Long before telescopes and space probes, his legacy extends beyond the stars. Of course, he is remembered in myth as the greatest teacher of heroes, the wise and gentle centaur who trained figures like Jason, Achilles, Heracles, and Asclepius, shaping their skills and character. His reputation for knowledge and healing, music, and other arts endures. He remains the stark contrast to the wild centaurs, the embodiment of wisdom and virtue in a monstrous form. A quirky tidbit about the Centaurus constellation is that it's a large and prominent constellation in the southern sky, containing some very bright stars. Perhaps its size and brilliance were intended by the gods to reflect the magnitude of Chiron's wisdom and his impact on the heroic age. It's not just a minor cluster, it's a significant feature of the heavens, ensuring he wouldn't be easily overlooked. There's joke number 1. Yeah, they gave me a pretty big constellation. Gotta fit all that wisdom somewhere. Following his death after relinquishing his immortality to escape unending suffering, Chiron was honored by the gods by being transformed into the constellation Centaurus, ensuring his lasting commemoration in the night sky as a tribute to his unparalleled wisdom, benevolence, and unique sacrifice. This is our mainstream historical fact, confirming his celestial legacy. Scholars debate the precise meaning of katasterism, transformation into a constellation in Greek myth. Was it purely a form of commemoration, like a permanent monument in the sky, acknowledging past deeds but implying no continued existence or influence? Or did it imply a form of continued, albeit different, cosmic existence or influence from the heavens? Suggesting that the figures transformed into constellations still played some role in the cosmos or the lives of mortals below. This is our open scholarly debate phrase, questioning whether Chiron's starry form was just a memory or a form of continued celestial presence. Chiron's legacy endures, both in the stories of the heroes he shaped and in the permanent image of the centaur etched into the night sky. He is remembered as the wise teacher, the benevolent healer, the unique figure who chose peace over immortal torment. Joke number 2. You look up at the stars. So, up there somewhere is the constellation of the guy who taught Achilles how to play the lyre. The universe is weird. His quiet life on Pelion, his knowledge, his pupils, his suffering, and his ultimate choice, all are captured in that starry form. Joke number 3. You imagine future sailors using the Centaurus constellation for navigation. Just follow the wise centaur, he knows the way, eventually. And now, as our journey through the life and surprisingly peaceful retirement of Chiron the Centaur comes to a close, you can feel the starlight settling. The myths are fading into quiet. The sounds of ancient Greece are softening. You can let go of the stories of heroes, the wisdom of the sage, the mountain home, and the eventual peace found through choice. All the tales are resting now, safe in the night sky. The vastness of the cosmos above you is still, peaceful, a final, starry tribute, breathing easy, letting go, drifting,